Hello and welcome back to Godot Devlogs, or if this is your first time here, hello and welcome to Godot Devlogs. I'm making a game in Godot from the ground up, and when we last left off, we had this little guy running around here, and now we need to make it so that we can kill him, and so that he can kill us. And so that's going to be the topic of today's video. Now, we went through several steps in order to get this done, the first of which is fixing some animations. Unlike our fancy character scripts, the enemy script does not have the animation manager thing. So that was one of the first things that I built out, just because when initially I made the enemy script, the only thing it was doing is walking at the player, so I only programmed it to walk. But now we're going to have to program it to die, we're going to have to program it to take damage, we're going to have to program it to do, you know, any number of different things, attack. So we need to have a state manager to manage those things, and so basically what I'm doing here is I'm taking that state manager I built in the player script and just essentially just copy and pasting it into this one. With that being done, the next thing we had to do is to actually add the animations that we wanted the goblin guy here to have. So you know, I'm adding some animations for dying. I did add an animation for attacking as well. And that process follows the same one that we used in order to import the animations for the knight guy, the player character. At the end of that process, I had 3 animations at that point: die, idle, and walk, which was a good enough starting point to dig back into the scripting of it and start to put together a function on the enemy script that would allow them to take damage. Now, back on the player script, we need to make sure that we are actually calling that take damage function when we get a melee attack that hits an enemy. In order to do that, we're running a for loop that'll iterate through every single collision box that the melee attack is registering. Now, the problem with that is that some of those collision boxes at some point in the future may not be enemies. So this is my first experience using the groups system that Godot has, but it has a really easy way to basically add an enemy to, or add something to a group, and then check if something's in that group. You just say, is in group. It's the is in group function call, and so we're only going to try to call the take damage function if we know that we're hitting an enemy. And then came the moment of truth. Can we actually kill the goblin? Yes. Yes, we can. As soon as it happened, I felt a little bad. I feel bad about this. Putting the loss of our dear goblin friend behind us, I decided that it would be a good idea to add a health bar to the enemy, so that you can see how much damage you're doing and just get that little bit of visual feedback in order to make sure that you're actually doing damage instead of the enemy just randomly dying on you. So here's a quick little time lapse of me fumbling my way through that process. As you can see, it started out swimmingly. This shit makes 0 sense. What the fuck is going on? What in the fuck is a style box? What am I doing? Okay, don't know why the fuck this is happening. So here's the box that it should supposedly live in, except... why? What is happening? I'm so confused. I'm just gonna manually put it where it needs to be. And hopefully, it won't be a problem later, right? At this point, I'm not sure if that's foreshadowing, because we haven't gotten there yet. But as soon as the health bar was in, like, a place I thought was, like, good enough just to continue on, the next step was to use scripts to connect it to the actual health value of the enemy. So that's what I did next. And once it was connected, things more or less worked. Kind of. The astute among you may see some of our attacks don't seem to be hitting, and for some reason the goblin stays alive even when his health was 0. Now, the goblin being alive at 0 health is easily fixed by just simply correcting one little check that I'm doing here. We need to check to make sure that health is less than or equal to 0 as opposed to just less than 0. Easily fixed. The attacks not hitting turned into a little bit of a different thing, which we'll be tackling shortly. I also quickly just added some logic to make it so that the goblin despawns after a certain amount of time when it's dead. This, of course, is done using a exported variable, so that way we can avoid any magic numbers, and that way we can edit everything in Godot without having to dig into the nuts and bolts of the code when we actually get to game designing. With combat looking more or less functional, it was now time to add some more goblins into the mix. It hardly felt fair just fighting this one goblin, so I wanted to make a monster spawning system, which worked similar to the Vampire Survivors sort of model of spawning monsters, where they come out from the sides of the character screen. So how I did that was I had just a node 2D that I added on the player themselves, so that it would follow exactly where the player was. And then underneath that node 2D, the main monster spawner, I added 4 more spawn point nodes and positioned them outside of where the camera looks, which is designated here by this pink box. So outside of that is the edges, the bounds of the camera, basically. Then we attach a script, and it's time to get programming on this. Now, the monster spawner itself is not super complicated. Basically, the whole idea is that it's going to, 1, check to see how many spawn points exist underneath it. And we actually add a group to make that check a little bit easier, called spawners. So we can check if something is in the spawners group, and then if it is, then that's fine, and we'll use it as a valid spawn point. After that, we use the attached timer node in order to instantiate enemies at a regular interval, using that timer node's timeout signal, which triggers every time the timer runs out. After working out a few minor bugs, here's what I ended up with, and I honestly think this looks really, really great. We have enemies coming in off screen. There are a couple of issues that we'll need to address, and then we will address. Mainly enemies kind of having collision and boxing you in and getting stuck on each other, and, you know, it doesn't feel great, but at the same time, this is wonderful, because now we have hordes and hordes of goblins ready to attack us and do damage. Once we add an ability for them to do damage, that is. After sleeping on it for a day, the next thing I decided to address was why sometimes the attack doesn't hit. And in order to do that, we do a good old-fashioned print statement, so that we can see what frame it thinks it's on. Because, just as a reminder, the way that the melee attack is working is it is checking on a specific frame of the animation, or checking to see if we're at a specific frame in the animation, and that is frame 5 in this case. And if we are on frame 5, then we want to do damage. But if it's not frame 5, either before or afterwards, the hitbox, for all intents and purposes, is inactive. So I made this print statement to see what it thinks, what it thought the frame was every time we swung our sword here. somehow, I don't know when this happened, but somehow we ended up accidentally changing the animation itself so that it never registers frame 5 at all. It just starts on frame 6, which is why it looks a little bit snappier than how I had originally animated it. So we go ahead and fix that, but aside from that, it's weird. It's double counting frames sometimes, it's skipping frames other times, so something about how we're checking to see what frame the animation is on is just not working. So I had to find something else to be able to check what frame we're on. As always, whenever confused or looking for specific functionality within any of these nodes, the best place to look is the documentation. And so we look at the animated sprite 2D node, and sure enough, it actually has a signal that it emits anytime that the frame changes. So by paying attention to the signal instead of arbitrarily checking, we can reliably get the frame numbers. Once everything was working smoothly, I found myself spending a lot of time, wasting a lot of time, just running around and whapping goblins. But I take that as a good sign. I think that means that eventually whatever game we might come up with will actually be fun. It was at this point that I decided that it was high time that we added our own health pool so that the goblin can kill us now. Up until this point, it's been a pretty one-sided fight, even if there are hordes and hordes of goblins. So that's what I ended up doing. But one thing I want to talk about is when I started doing this, I started to sense a bigger issue. Right now, we have these two scripts, one for the basic enemy and one for the player character. Both of these scripts have health and take damage functions and do damage functions, but they're all implemented slightly differently in like different ways. As we grow the number of things in our game, it's gonna make things pretty confusing if these two things stay totally separated. So what I'm thinking is, at some point in the near future, we'll need to do a refactor where we take both of these scripts and have them inherit from one base, like, entity script. This entity script might have take damage, do damage, health variables, like all of this stuff that we need that's common between both the player character and the enemies or whatever other entities we might want to add in the future. If we have both of these scripts inherit from that one entity script, it's going to make things a lot easier later on. I didn't do that for this video. It's going to be a little bit more of a project, I think, just because I'm still pretty new to working with a lot of this stuff. I know the basics on how it works, but it's going to take me some time, so that might be a project for next video. At some point in giving myself health and like having the enemy be able to attack me, I got distracted and decided I wanted to have some knockback to my swings, so that way I can kind of like push the goblins away as I hit them. And we tried a number of different things with mixed results. Now, I'm not a huge vector math guy, so it took me a lot of trial and error to get this knockback feature working correctly, but after enough time, I was able to eventually get something that felt pretty good. Finally, it's time for the goblins to hit back. After adding an area so that their attack triggers basically whenever I enter that area, I programmed it so that it gave me a slight knockback, in addition to taking away some of my health. And eventually we get our first death by Goblin. It's not spectacular because I hadn't added the animations yet at this point, but, you know, there it is. And that's pretty much where we're at in the project right now. One thing I realized moving through this project is just how much time everything takes. It's hard to all fit in a video, but this stuff takes forever to get working right. Hours and hours and hours of having an idea, troubleshooting, tweaking, going back, refining. It's so much fun though, and I'm having a really good time putting it together. If you watch the end of the video, thank you. Please consider dropping a like and subscribing as well so you'll get notified when the next update comes along. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.